A mile beneath the Red Sea, scientists just found something that shouldn't exist. Scientists have been trying to answer the question of how life began on Earth for decades. They think it all started with an event called the Last Universal Common Ancestor, or LUCA. It was when all life on Earth was united in a single cell. But how did that single cell get started? Did it begin in shallow water near the shore, or deep in the dark ocean? Scientists think they finally have the answer, and it turns out the reason we have unfound it before is because there was something in the way, something that shouldn't be there at all. In 2020, the research ship Ocean Explorer set out into the Red Sea for a mission to map the ocean floor. With them was a submersible that could reach depths of 6,500 feet, almost 1 mile. At that depth, there should be no light at all. On its journey down, the sub found nothing but darkness until suddenly it spotted something strange. There was a shape on the seabed, something odd that looked like a dark mirror lying on its side. The crew knew this wasn't a natural feature, so they decided to investigate further. As the submersible approached the object, it turned on its lights, revealing what was really there, and their faces lit up with surprise. What they had seen from afar was a massive lake, a giant body of fresh water, sitting 1,000 meters below the surface of the ocean. The entire thing was covered with a thick fog that should have dissipated long ago. But instead, it was still there, more than 2 years later. This is incredible because this lake shouldn't even exist, so how could it have formed? Scientists have since come up with a few ideas, but none are certain. The most likely explanation is called double diffusive convection. When warm water meets cold water, it can form a boundary between them. This is because the warm water is less dense, so it floats on top of the cold water. In this case, the warm water above the lake is less dense, so it rises up towards the colder surface water below. The cold water is then forced to sink down into the lake. This creates a boundary between the fresh water of the lake and the salt water of the ocean. If the boundary between the two types of water is sharp enough, it can create a mirage effect. Light will be refracted at the boundary, which can cause objects to appear distorted. This distortion can make it look like there is a layer of fog on the surface of the lake. This is similar to what happens when you see a mirage in the desert. The hot air near the ground causes light to bend, making it seem like there is a pool of water in the distance. But this doesn't explain why the lake is there in the first place. After all, lakes need land to hold water, but there isn't any nearby. To understand how this lake formed, we need to go back to the beginning. Deep in the Red Sea, there are two tectonic plates colliding. One is the Arabian plate, which is moving to the east. The other is the Nubian plate, which is moving to the west. As the plates collide, the sea water is forced down into the cracks. Water is incompressible, so instead of squeezing into the cracks, it flows over the edge, creating giant pools. These pools are then cut off from the rest of the ocean, forming deep lakes. But what makes this possible is the fact that the water is very salty. When the water is squeezed down into the cracks, it becomes even saltier. This is because the fresh water from the lakes is pushed into the cracks, leaving behind only the salt water. The result is a series of deep, salty lakes hidden beneath the Red Sea. We don't know exactly how many there are or how deep they go, but we do know that they contain vast amounts of methane. That's because the water is so salty, it can't support life. And methane is produced by living things. Methane is usually destroyed quickly in the ocean, but in these lakes, it builds up over time. The amount of methane in these lakes is so great that it could theoretically be used as a fuel source. In fact, scientists think that methane from these lakes may be responsible for the bizarre ecosystems found around hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. Vents are areas where hot water and minerals come out of the earth. They are usually found near volcanoes, and they create environments that are hostile to most life. But there are some organisms that thrive in these conditions, and scientists think that these organisms use methane from the lakes as a source of energy. It's not clear whether or not this is actually the case, but it's interesting to speculate on the possibility that life on Earth may have originated in these lakes. If life can exist in such extreme environments, it's possible that it could exist in environments that we currently think are uninhabitable. Maybe the reason we have unfound life elsewhere in the universe is because we're looking in the wrong places. Maybe we need to look for environments that are similar to the Red Sea lakes, places that are salty, dark and full of methane. Maybe these are the kinds of environments where life is most likely to evolve. The Red Sea lakes also raise questions about the origin of life on Earth. We know that the early Earth was very different from the Earth we live on today. The atmosphere was full of gases that are now rare, like methane and ammonia. The oceans were also very different. They were much warmer and had a much higher salt content. Could these lakes be a window into the past? Could they give us clues about the conditions that led to the origin of life? Maybe they can. Or maybe they're simply a reminder of how little we know about the world around us. As the submersible continued to explore the lake, it found more strange and surprising things. For example, it found fish that shouldn't be able to live in such salty water. It also found coral reefs that should have died long ago. What's more, it found that the lake is full of methane and hydrogen sulfide, two gases that are deadly to humans. Yet the fish seem to be thriving in these conditions. But perhaps the most surprising thing about the lake is its appearance. It looks like a giant pool of fog, and it's so thick that it obscures everything beyond it. This is even stranger when you consider that it's 1,000 meters below the surface. The pressure at this depth should be so great that it would crush any air bubbles and prevent fog from forming. But somehow this lake manages to exist. One of the scariest things about the lake is that it seems to be growing. The submersible had previously explored the area and found nothing. But when it returned, the lake was there, and it's not the only one. Scientists believe that there may be thousands of these lakes beneath the ocean, and they're all growing. If that's true, it means that the ocean floor is constantly changing. Entire lakes are being created and destroyed all the time. It also means that the maps we have of the ocean floor are outdated the moment they remade. When the submersible finally broke through the fog, what it saw was truly amazing. The other side of the lake was filled with gigantic ice formations that looked like nothing else on Earth. They were huge, jagged, and seemingly impossible. No one had ever seen anything like it before. The ice formations were so beautiful that the crew named them the ice pyramids, but they soon realized that they were in danger. The submersible was getting too close to the ice, and the strong currents were pulling it towards the jagged formations. The crew had to make a quick escape before the submersible was damaged. As they pulled away, they saw something even stranger. The ice formations were moving. They were floating towards the submersible, propelled by the strong currents. It was as if the lake itself was coming alive. The crew was stunned by what they had seen. They had discovered something that shouldn't exist. A lake that was growing beneath the ocean, full of deadly gases and impossible ice formations. It was a place that seemed straight out of a science fiction movie, but it was real, and it was hiding in plain sight. The crew knew that they had stumbled upon something truly amazing. They had discovered a world that was hidden from view, a world that was full of beauty and mystery, and they had only glimpsed the surface.